My attempt to show you how I make a formative assessment in the STAR Cambium platform. Okay, so first you go to Texas Assessments. I should have it bookmarked and I just Google it every time. So Texas Assessment, up at this top gray ribbon, you click Educators, scroll down. I think these three headings are helpful. Prepare for testing, during testing, after testing. So in this first heading, prepare for testing, Texas formative assessment is where we're going to make the assessment or activity. The TDS test delivery system is where we're going to like administer the session so kids can actually take it. And the CRS is where we're going to get data for what they scored on that assessment that we created. The other thing you're going to get from the CRS is their TSDS ID. So I'm actually going to show you that first because the students will need this to log in. So when you log into the CRS, this is where you look at their STAR or TELPAS scores. You need to go back 1 year, otherwise it will say no results because they haven't taken one of these tests this year. You click go to dashboard, you click reading or whatever assessment, and this number is the number you need to print off for students. I just put these in a little document with their name. They need to use this number to log into any assessment you create. So you're going to have to print that off for them some way. Okay, so I'm going to leave the CRS. I can leave by going back to this tab, or I can also use this waffle menu and I can go to TFAR, Texas Formative Assessment Resource. It says authoring because we're going to make tests. Okay, so once you're in here, there's a few things you can do. You can view tests that are already there. You can look at tests you've already made. You can find tests. I think it's helpful to view shared libraries to see what is available. This filter system is going to be important when you're creating tests. I always check items shared with me, STAR release items, and other test items. You want to make sure that you click your language. You can filter by item type, like if your kids really particularly need support with one particular thing. Subject, English language arts and reading, grades, I'm clicking 5th grade. Once you start favoriting things, you can filter by favorites, and this is the tool I think is most helpful. Once you start labeling things, you can filter by label. So I have like created all of these labels, and I'll show you how to do that so that I can filter by genre or like text sets with ECRs and SCRs. So you can apply those filters, and then you're going to see all of the question sets for that grade level. So you can see here, like, for example, I've put a favorite here. I can click this and see that this is STAR released items. It shows me how many items there are, what item type. So this is a multiple choice item that assesses 5.6C. I can see that this passage has a total of 7 items. This says simple text entry, so that tells me it's either an ECR or an SCR. If I want to look at the actual items without doing anything with them, I can click this 3 dots. I can click preview. And here I can actually look at this and see, oh, that's a drama. I can see that this is an SCR. So you can see here, I have labeled it drama and SCR. So to create a label, you would just click label in that menu. You can create a new label. You can manage your labels. I have not experimented with saving as a PDF. I'm sure that would be helpful if you want packets. So this is just, I'm just in the library. I'm just looking at all my items. So this is where I go to like label everything. So that way it's easier to filter based on my preferences. So you can see that I have labeled a lot of these. Like this is labeled revising. This is labeled ECR informational. I should also, this is labeled fiction informational impaired because it's a paired passage. So I like to go through and label everything. It makes it easier to filter for when I'm making an assessment. Okay, now to make an assessment. I go to dashboard and I click create new test. Now, this step is important. The very first thing I like to do is to go to test properties and name it. I'm going to name this fiction C because I need to make a third fiction activity. So I'm going to name it fiction C. I like to put in the description all the things I'm going to have in there. So I'm going to have 2 fiction passages, 6 to 12 multiple choice questions, and 1 ECR. That's what I'm aiming to include. You're going to use grades from items. You can put some keywords in there. I've never done that. Now, this part's important. This is how you're going to make sure that your students' accommodations that are already programmed into the STAR platform, they get those on this assessment. So you need to go to TDS Student View, and you need to click Reading Universal. That tells the testing delivery system, use those accommodations I've entered on that student's reading profile. So that's important. Under test tools, I like to click enable dictionary and enable thesaurus. If you were teaching math, you could put on a math reference sheet. I put on the writing checklist. So that's going to set up the test so that they have the same tools that they would have on a reading test. And then I click close. So I've named my test. I've added those properties. Now I can add items from the library. So here you can see you've got those same item filters. Now, because I've set up my labels, I don't have to re-click subject, languages, item types over and over and over again. I know I wanted something with an ECR and I wanted fiction. So I'm going to go ahead and apply those filters. And I can see this pulled from ECR, but it's informational, so I don't want that today. This has fiction, but it's paired. I don't want that today. The camping trip, that is fiction and an ECR. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that into this assessment because I want an ECR on this day. So I'm going to click add. I can preview it also. If I wanted to just preview it, I just click add and I can see just that one first question. And I'm going to click add items to test. It's going to update the items. And so now I've got that stimulus with a passage and the 7 associated questions, including that ECR. ECR is number 6. You can see here I have all the content and language supports that my EBs and special education students will get. It has all of those pieces. So if I wanted to, I could move, like if I want the ECR to be last, I can go over here, select question 6 and click down. It's going to edit that. So now my ECR is last. So if I want to add an item to the set, that's going to nest it in with the camping trip story. This would be like if I wanted to author another item, if I wanted to create my own SCR, create my own multiple choice item, something like that. If I want to add a new item, like that's not nested with the camping trip story, then I would click add a new item. And I do. I want a second passage. So I'm going to add from the library. This still has my ECR and fiction filter. I'm going to turn off that ECR filter because now I just want something fiction. I don't want to use one of my ECR ones. So I've got Wonders at Winter Camp. That's paired, so I don't need that today. A leader. Okay, that looks like that could be a good one. It doesn't have any other tags. I'm going to make sure it doesn't have an SCR. Multiple choice, multiple choice, multiple choice. I don't think I've used this yet for another test. That's why it's helpful to keep track of which ones you've already used. So I should have written in here which ones I've already used. If I was organized, I would have done that. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and add a leader in. I don't think I've used this yet. So I'm going to add that item to the test. And so right now that represents questions 8 through 13. But I want, so now if I want to look at it and I don't want to look at this search bar again, I just click item 8. And now I can look at that text. And I am going to go ahead and note here which 2 I have so I don't forget which ones I've used. So I've used the camping trip and a leader. So, but let's say I want my ECR to be last, right? So like right now, the way my test is, if I preview test, I have my ECR in the middle and then a second passage with just multiple choice questions. So maybe I want my ECR to be last. The way I do that is I click on number 1 and you can see that it's nested with 7 items. And like, to me, this kind of looks like a title page, I guess. I'm going to click down on that whole thing. And that's going to drag the entire set down to the bottom. So when I preview, I can see now I have a leader first with my 6 multiple choice questions. I click next. And then I have the camping trip with my 7, 8, 9, 10, my other multiple choice questions and my ECR. So I make sure that everything is exactly how I want it by previewing it. I double check those test properties. See, now this says 2 fiction passages. I'm going to go ahead and put in the ones I chose, a leader, the camping trip. It's already auto-selected grade 5 for me. I make sure my thesaurus and dictionary are on and that I put my writing checklist in there, especially for that ECR. I've checked universal reading. Now this is important. If I click publish test, I won't be able to edit this again. So you could just go back. This is saved. It's automatically saved. So I could just go back to my dashboard and I could go view tests I created, and there it is in draft form. Fiction C. As you can see, I started earlier. I better get into that, figure out what I did there. Okay, anyway. So you can see I've got a leader, I've got these questions. I could view all of the questions. I can see what teaks I have. Now if I want to edit it again, I can click edit. And then when I'm ready, I know for sure it's done. Then I can go ahead and publish test. Again, I have an opportunity here to make sure that I've selected the correct tools. I can't edit them here, but I could click cancel and make sure that I've chosen the correct properties. Then I click publish. So now I have a published assessment. I can preview it. I can build a booklet to print it. I can copy it so that I could make I could edit it again by making a copy. I can share it with a certain recipient that works at Stellic. I can label it to create my own labels, or I can archive it so it's like not in this main page. So that is basically step 1, which is test authoring. Creating the session, I will make a separate video for. Hope that helps.